On this week's episode, we talk about the post-hardcore slash metalcore band, the Bled. We talk about how they enjoyed being a bridging band from the softer post-hardcore sounds to the heavier music, having pulled influences from bands like Refused and Converge, but then touring with quite a few bands like The Used, Silverstein, and Thrice. Josh digs into their unique sound, having two overlapping lead guitar riffs, and Kyle wishes he could go back to 2007 and forget about all those Risecore bands and focus on more bands like The Bled. It's time to open this pit up.
Welcome to another episode of the Pit Therapy Podcast. I am Josh. I'm here with Trevor and Kyle. We've all kind of been on odd schedules the last couple of weeks. Trevor was out for a vacation. I don't know where Kyle was last week. And
dead.
And I had a rough week last week, so here we are.
I got better.
What were you guys up to last week?
What did we do last? What did I do last week? I don't even know.
I survived.
We all got sick in my house again. I feel like we've been sick so much this like since the new year. And not even like the winter time. It's just since the new year.
Mm-hmm.
Two of my kids were throwing up. Both me and my wife got sick. Like, it sucks. And we're still just barely getting over it.
The stomach bug that's passing through everyone sucks.
Yeah.
Because my kids had that, so I'm just waiting until I start vomiting.
Violently.
Exactly. Upchucking.
You have a double ender. You have to sit on the toilet and have a garbage can in front of you.
Those are the worst, dude.
Yeah. That's wild.
Call it boo. It's like a ghost. It just sneaks up on you unexpectedly. Scares the shit out of you.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't even remember what I did last week. I remember telling you, I was like, dude, I'm way too just busy. I couldn't wrap my head around half what was going on just between work and life. We watched my nephews, not this weekend, but the weekend prior, and they're 3 and 2 and have like absolutely no discipline in their body for certain reasons. And so, yeah, I have 4 kids I was ready to murder by Saturday night.
Dude, freaking kids, man. Just tonight at dinner, we were sitting there, and all of a sudden my oldest is like, my sister just hit me. And I turn and I look at her. I'm like, why? She's like, she looked at me funny. I didn't like it. It's like, well, priorities, right? I mean, raising to be a hardcore kid. When someone looks at you funny, hit them.
That's funny. Yeah, this last weekend my internet went out. And trying to explain to 2 little kids, like, the internet is out. You can't just go buy it. Like, it doesn't work. So we went back to watching DVDs, which was actually kind of nice. But my daughter was like, I don't want to watch this. Can we change it to something else? I'm like, it don't work like that.
Yeah.
DVDs in.
More effort than I'm willing to put in right now for that.
Yeah. It was funny. My wife wasn't too pumped, but we watched Stand By Me. And I'm like, it's a classic. You have to watch that at least once.
For a 3 and a 2-year-old?
No, for a 6 and a 2-year-old.
Oh, a 6 and a 2-year-old? I'm with your wife this go around, Josh. Like,
it's not even that bad.
No, but the content.
It's not even that bad. It's what you were doing at like 9 years old, going to find a dead body.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
I'm sure Kyle was doing that at 9 years old. The dead body probably didn't exist. Like, you were going down with the boys to find some crazy stuff.
Yeah, but
it's not something you show to your kids.
I'm with Trevor on this one too.
I don't know. Lily's seen like it and like Godzilla and all sorts of stuff, and I'm like, this is cake. This should be a G movie.
But, teach their own, man. Teach their own.
My son came up. He's like, Dad, somebody said the C word at school. And I was like, what? I was like, what's the C word? And he's like, cocaine. And I was like, yeah, that's definitely the C word. Don't ever say that.
That's funny.
I freaking love it. Do my kids come home all the time and they're always like dropping the random letters and they're just like, yeah, someone said the V word today. I'm like, what? And they just throw out some random thing. You're just like, first of all, that word's made up that you just said. Second of all, who cares? So, but the one was like, my oldest came home and she was like, someone said the F word today. I was like, all right, we're going to the other room. Tell me what the F word was. And I don't even remember what she said, but I think it was like freaking or something like that. And I was like, okay, not the true F word. You're okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
I'm trying to decide at like what point I tell my kid what the swear words are so that he can at least know.
Some of them you just like put in your normal language and then it just becomes second nature and they don't even know.
Well, he's listened to music with me that has said that word, and I don't think he knows what that word is. So
We just tell Lily those are at-home words only. At-home words.
Dude, I
I
grew up
know
in a
I'm
house
gonna
where people cursed like crazy. So
like I know I'm gonna get a phone call one day from the school and it's gonna be like, your daughter said blah blah blah, and I have to put them on mute because I'm gonna be dying laughing over the phone. And I'm like, okay, I'll talk to her, and I know it's gonna be that's an at-home word. At home. Nowhere else. At home. Yeah.
You need to tell that in front of the principal and in front of the teacher.
I don't think I'll have to.
Don't worry about it. We'll make sure that she always says that at home. They're gonna be like,
I-
what?
I don't even think I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna walk in and they're gonna be like, this isn't even worth it. Just cancel the meeting. They probably look us up on Facebook to see if the meeting's even worth it or if they just like send her home with like a
note.
Don't do again card or something. No, Lily's actually really good in school. She tested. They're supposed to be like 100 points in whatever part they're at in school, and she tested at 240.
Nice.
So I just am like, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. It's working. So no, but actually, schools are weird though. Like I don't know how like strict your guys' kids' schools are, but or like I should say like the schools. Like, do you guys ever like run into like weird parents where you're kind of like you're that one?
Dude, my kids play sports in Texas. We're the only like parent that's not borderline abusive to my kid because the 8-year-old's not an NBA player or something.
So like this is what I mean. So I went in a while ago to check in for a field trip, and because you're supposed to or whatever. And there was a parent in front of me, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're going. No, this parent was like, my daughter was checked out yesterday by her grandfather. And she's like, and the lady's like, oh, were you like not notified? And she goes, no, I was, but he was never identified. He wasn't he wasn't asked his ID. And she's like, well, we asked everybody for their ID to check out a child. He's like, well, obviously not. And I want to talk to your administrator. You're going to be talking to my lawyer. This is like 7 a.m. and I'm like, you just woke up and chose violence today. Like what?
Yeah.
To an extent, I'm like, well, I mean, I guess that they forgot like their ID or whatever. Like, yeah, sure, whatever. But on the other hand, I'm like, do people not realize that that's how almost like you burn yourself? Because what's going to happen? You're going to be stuck somewhere. You're going to be like, hey, mom, can you go get my kid? Like, I'm stuck. And if they don't have their ID or whatever, but they're very well known, but now your child is red flagged in the system, like, sorry. Yeah, like you just kind of burn yourself.
Well, the weird part about that whole situation is that they were concerned, but they knew. And like they were okay with that happening. They were just worried about him being ID'd. I'm pretty sure if a kid walked out and saw grandma or someone knock grandma, they'd be like, I don't know you. Like, what are you talking about? I gotta go with you.
You know what I mean? That's what I'm
You're
like.
my youngest.
Yeah, but there's like tons of situations. I don't know. I get Amber Alerts down here in Texas like all the time because it's a bigger state and it's always family, right? And it happens picking them up from schools all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Like I would be in agreement if like the parent didn't know.
Oh, that's what I'm saying too.
Oh,
But that's like the parent knew, and it's kind of like, all right, man, well, you just red flagged your kid.
So why are you fighting on this?
Yeah.
Right?
So let's say if Grandpa comes to get the kid again and forgets his ID again, and there is no leeway. It's like, sorry. Then it's gonna be the same parent calling. So my father was supposed to come get my child today, and you would not let her get checked out.
Right.
And we'd be like, yeah, because he didn't have his ID, and we went down this route last time, and you yelled at us, and you'd be like, well, I want to talk to my attorney. It just
Right.
those kinds of parents. I'm like, bro.
So we actually, for Eli's school, they have like a list and the IDs of people that we've allowed to pick up that's not us.
Mm-hmm.
It's turning
Which I
into
like.
that.
Yeah. I like it though, because I don't know. You never know.
We can't even get into the school. We have to like use the ring system and have to pull out our IDs and show the ID before they'll even unlock the door.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's no way he could have gotten into the damn school without the ID.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Dude, Utah in general is having a freaking education crisis. We don't have to get into this now, but they're struggling.
Dude, just wild.
Struggling.
Anyway, trailing off here. What about there's been some shows. You went to Gideon the other night, didn't you, Trevor?
Yeah, and I hate to be that guy, but I only stayed for No Cure and Fox Lake and then left. So
Yeah,
I didn't
for Gideon either. So
I didn't see Left to Suffer or Gideon. I don't know. Like freaking No Cure, man. Freaking awesome. That's why I was going. I missed them when they were out here in the fall or the winter time. And so when I saw them coming through, I was like, okay, I'm going to see No Cure. And then I had listened to Fox Lake a little bit throughout the week. And so stuck around for those guys. And they killed it. It's not really my style of music. Like they're a hip hop hardcore act. So it was like new metal, like heavy hardcore new metal, essentially, with like rapping vocals. But it was fun. The crowd went wild for them. Like right when they got started, they were saying, we're using this film for a music video. So we want to see y'all go wild. If any band wants a crowd to like actually do something, just say you're filming a music video and everyone will decide to do something. But no, it was fun. I'd never been to Urban Lounge. I don't know how I've avoided Urban Lounge. It's a fine venue. Nothing
Was it Urban Lounge or Soundwell? I thought it was Soundwell.
Nah, it was Urban Lounge. Yeah. So it was a fine venue. I hate that middle bar right in the middle kind of thing. And it was 21 and older. So I feel like the crowd wasn't the right crowd for No Cure. And it wasn't, you know what I mean? Clearly the crowd was there for Gideon and Left to Suffer and stuff. So.
I've seen some cool bands at Urban Lounge. I saw Agnostic Front. I've seen Sick of It All. I saw Integrity. And they were all there. And that was wild. Like, you know how they have those little round tables that people can kind of hang out at?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those all got thrown within the first band. It was hilarious.
Those kind of bands would be fun, right? Because they're bringing out the old guys. You know, we're talking 45 plus guys coming out for those bands. This wasn't the right show for Urban Lounge, in my opinion. Like it should have been somewhere else.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue that they're having is people want so much money to rent out a venue for the night. That like Urban Lounge and Kelby are kind of the two cheaper sides of deals in any DIY venue. You know, like the Death Before Dishonor just played, and that was at a new space that they found. There's another show I think there this weekend. I can't remember what venue it is. It's Dead Heat. No, Dead Heat's at Urban Lounge.
Dead Heat's at Urban?
I think so. I think it's Urban Lounge.
Oh, I'd be surprised about that. Because Urban's 21 and older.
Yeah. I think it's Dead Heat, Mask, and that band Zodiac Killer. But, yeah, I think it's just one of the cheaper sided deals. I know, like, Soundwell's super expensive, and then, like, places like the Complex, things like that, that's almost, like, too big of a venue for a band like that. But my buddy Jordan that I work with went to that show, and he said Gideon was awesome. I haven't seen Gideon play since like 2013, but yeah, he said they were awesome. They killed it.
Yeah, It's just not my style anymore. I I haven't listened to Gideon since like their first 1 or 2 albums,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm not really familiar. I was planning on staying for Left to Suffer because I think that Taylor Barber, their vocalist, is incredible. But
Yeah.
I was listening to Left to Suffer that day before I went out there and didn't realize how Rob Zombie-ish their non-screamy vocals are. And I was
Right.
just like, I can't do it. I watched the first band, the local band play. I don't even remember what they're called, like In Your Grave or something like that. It was a more deathcore style band.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm good for No Cure. I'm good for Fox Lake. And then I bailed. So
Did either of you guys get to see any of the clips from Ceremony playing out there in LA this last weekend?
Yeah.
Dude, it sold out, over 3,500 people.
that's crazy.
That LP played front to back in its entirety for the first and last time ever. Wild.
They say that. They say that.
That's first and last. They're that kind of band that would do that. They might play some stuff off it, but from front to back. Soul Search. Have you guys ever get a chance to listen to them? So they played. They've been kind of making a comeback over the last like year or so, and they were seeing clips of that. It was pretty wild. I'm bummed I didn't get to see them. I'm not a huge fan of Ceremony, but that's crazy to think like over 3,500 people show up.
That is insane.
Like that.
I like Ceremony.
Yeah,
I would have gone to that for sure, but
yeah, I had some friends from here that went down, so that's sick though.
You know, I was talking to a buddy at the show, and we were trying to figure out why it wasn't maybe the right crowd, and we figured, you know, some people were probably going to Ceremony and stuff like that. So, because I thought No Cure was going to bring out a few more people than were there.
What day was it, that No Cure show?
Last Friday.
So I know there was a lot of people going to that Death Before Dishonor
On
that Sunday.
Yeah.
So
and
there was.
I mean, it was $30, 27 or whatever. Like, so it was a more expensive show than I've paid for in a minute.
Yeah, I think like what you said though too, just with it being 21 and up, because a lot of this like newer generation of kids, they're pretty young.
Yeah.
So they ain't gonna make it to a 21 and up. So they're looking for all age venues. So,
right. You're right though. I mean, Dead Heat is there at Urban, so that'll be interesting to see who shows up to that.
I can't remember what the venue's called now, but you remember the Comedy Circuit Club in Midvale? Like you could go on Comcast and watch shows on there.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that place, Kyle?
No.
Well, that venue's open again. It's not called Comedy Circuit Club anymore, but they started their own shows there, so that might be kind of interesting. But you got any shows going on down there, Kyle?
Well, there's the NSF weekend or whatever that's coming up on March 9th with like Incendiary, God's Hate, Suburban Scum, and I think Judiciary just signed on too. But I'm out of town for it because the universe hates me. So
I thought you were going to be sick.
I know, but I can't get out of this one. I tried.
I tried. I might be sick that day.
I am going to the Bled because they're doing that little Texas tour.
Yeah, I'm really jelly.
April. So they're playing Pass the Flask front to back. And then the Maylene tour. Dude, I'm totally going to that one. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think those were the only ones that were announced. I don't know. I haven't seen a ton of like really cool tours other than some of these like nostalgia ones, like the Bayside tour with Finch. And I'm going to go to Hot Water Music in May, but I don't know. I don't know what else to plan.
It's not till the summer, but Say Anything is playing like their 20-year anniversary of that record. I can't remember what the record's called.
Yeah,
it's white. So is there like most known one, but
isn't it like something boy?
Is a real boy?
Is a real boy, yeah. Yeah, they're touring through that. Did you actually see? So last I heard, Sum 41 was not a band anymore, but then I saw something the other day that they released a new single and they were releasing a new record.
Yeah, that was done though. My understanding is that was done before they decided to call it quits. So they're still releasing it and they're still doing this final tour. But I think
Mhm.
that it's the end.
Right. Have you guys listened to that new single?
I saw it get posted. I need to listen to it. I haven't
It's,
though yet.
I really like Sum 41. They're probably a top band that got me into this stuff, but that new single is really good. It's like got a good mixture of almost like does this look infected, but then it kind of goes back to like uh what is it, Fat Lip?
Oh,
Is
really?
that what that record was
Yeah,
called? I can't
yeah.
remember. All Killer No Filler. Yeah, so it's kind of a mixture of those two records, I think anyway. So
Did you see? Do you like Life's Question?
yes.
So they just dropped a new song and it's a freaking banger.
That's what you were saying. I
Yeah,
haven't listened to the new song. Dude, there's so many bands coming out on that Days
I
Records.
know.
It's so hard to keep up with, but every time I hear something from that label, I don't even question it. Yeah, that's good.
It's true.
There's I can't remember there's a new band on there, and it's actually got the singer from Koyo, or Joey, and
hmm
he's doing vocals for a hardcore band.
Is it Crypt? Is that what they're called?
No, it's like
Oh
my
wait, no,
phone
the
doesn't
Crypt's the
die.
guy from Citizen.
It just posted some merch. It's Blood Runs Cold. It's funny too, because like when he played in Typecast, he did the screams for it, and it literally is the exact same scream from Typecast.
Oh, sick.
And so it's super awesome, but it also does slightly bum me out because it's probably the closest I'm going to get to a Typecast reunion. But no, they released an LP I think last year, and it's actually really good.
It's cool.
For the last few days, I've caught Knocked Loose. They dropped their single "Blinding Faith." Kyle
Mm-hmm.
and I were messaging back and forth. Did you have a chance to listen to that one?
I haven't.
It's interesting. I liked it. I thought it was good. I'm not saying like it's my favorite song ever by Knock Loose, but I thought it was good. It starts out almost deathcore-ish, but then it picks up speed, and once it picks up is when it gets good, in my opinion.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I'm not a fan of Knocked Loose, but I respect that this far into the game and how big they've gotten, they haven't sold their sound out because the song's heavy, like
It's
it
very
hits
heavy.
hard, and so I respect that they didn't sell out or pull a turnstile or anything. So
And
Right.
then I caught the single "Year of the Vulture" by the Wonder Years. It's kind of more throwback pop punk sound. Like I liked it. I thought it was really good. It's in line with The Hum Goes On,
Yeah.
their last album. So they're getting a little bit more back to that style. And then I finally listened to the Alkaline Trio album, which I liked.
oh really?
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
I remember you messaged me a while ago saying that Advent was playing shows again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I played with them in 2017. They used to play in a band called Beloved. Did you ever listen to them?
I've heard Beloved. Yeah,
Yep, it's literally same lineup. It's just a different band name.
yeah. So they did. Let's see, Advent. Yeah, they've got a few tours in the next, I guess, few months. April,
Mm-hmm.
they're playing a festival, and so yeah, but it's all California stuff. I don't think they're going anywhere.
They'll like pop up, play a few shows, and disappear. Because yeah, I played with them with Sleeping Giants last shows, and so I got to play with them 2 nights in a row. Dude, have you ever seen Advent?
No,
They are so heavy live,
that's sick.
and his vocals are awesome, and they're just super nice dudes.
Yeah, I would kill to see them live.
Yeah, no, they're cool. No, that's sweet. Well, I know you kind of touched on it earlier that you're going to see the Bled, which I'm super jelly of, which is the band that we're going to talk about today. And I will forewarn, my phone is pretty much dead, so I'm not even going to try and look up any information. So I feel like this is a cool band to choose because I feel like all three of us feel probably pretty much the same about this band, about the records, and just kind of everything about it. I feel like they were definitely, it's weird. I feel like they were one of the heavier but easier listening bands to get into because they were heavy, but like it wasn't like too heavy for my ears at first to kind of be like, I don't know. It was like instant, like sucked in.
Yeah.
What do you guys remember like listening to Bled when you first heard them? We'll start with you, Trevor.
Yeah, so I caught these guys probably like realistically it was after that show that you guys went to up in Ogden, where they came out with the dude with the cutout. Because you guys sat there and just talked about him. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was in the
This is the
venue.
Thrice store, right?
Yeah, that was in the venue.
Oh, was it? I thought it was Ogden.
They did play in Ogden years later.
Oh, anyways, so I probably started listening to these guys around that time, and I just remember "Pass the Flask," and it's the second song on the album, I think. You know who's Seatbelt. I remember that opening riff like very specifically, and where you talk about them being a band that's heavier but also easier to listen to. Like that's the style that I remember hearing from these guys, where it's exactly what you said. It's like, okay, this is heavier than what I'm listening to currently, but it has a lot of the guitar, a lot of the tones and stuff that's very similar to what we're listening to as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, like you said, easier to get into. These guys a little bit heavier, probably actually branched and opened the door to heavier music for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of talk. Like, do you guys remember the local band Loom?
I remember the
them
name
at all. They were from like Provo. Anyway, there was like a lot of people around that time, at least from Utah, that said like if the Bled wouldn't have made it, the Loom would have taken like their place because kind of the earlier stuff, they were pretty interchangeable. But that was like you say, like there was a lot of influence from the Bled that gave to the band Loom, and I definitely feel like that was like almost like the next come up, like almost like the graduation from a band like Poison the Well. That was like, hey, we're gonna take that, but we're gonna kind of make it a little heavier and make it a little weirder, but make it like easier to listen to. Because I really like Poison the Well, but like Poison the Well was a little harder for me to like listen to, if that makes sense, than the Bled. What do you think, Kyle?
So I remember getting into these guys with my older brother, and this whole like generation of post-hardcore metalcore with like Poison the Well, and I don't know, it's like half the bands that we talk about, I swear. Like, I don't know that people will ever be able to do this sound again as well as these guys did. So I remember Pass the Flask just being incredible. Going back and listening to it, because that was the first album I heard. It's like a lot heavier than I remember. I know you guys say that it's not like that heavy, but it kind of is. You know, like you go back and listen to Poison the Well and these guys, and you're just like, man, that's way heavier than I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally appreciate the sound. And I remember going to that show and knowing who they were and listening to all their songs and being like, this is exactly what I wanted from seeing the Bled. I'm pretty sure my older brother was there with me. You know, we were moshing and stuff, and it was just this era of like post-hardcore metalcore will never be beat, in my opinion. So
right.
So when you say that though, like it's way heavier, at least for me, I won't speak for Josh, right? I'm specifically referring to like the riffs that are, it's a very post-hardcore sound. Sure, like overall in the end, it is a very heavy fill, but you do get that broken up post-hardcore riffs and stuff like that I don't feel like you got with Poison the Well. Poison the Well was metalcore.
but see, this is okay. Well, I don't know. I guess the later. No, I don't know.
I'm talking about Pass the Flask. Let's make that clear.
There's a weird line, I guess, of where metalcore and post-hardcore can cross. Because you listen to, I don't know, because I do feel like Poison the Well's more on the metalcore, but it has a ton of post-hardcore influences. So maybe the Bled is the reverse of that. They're more post-hardcore with some metalcore influence. But when I'm talking about heavier, like, yeah, they've got like the really cool guitar tones, the really cool riffs, but their breakdowns are like heavier than most stuff that you get from most metalcore bands today, you know?
To me, it was like heavy without being heavy.
Take a shot if you're counting how many times Josh says that.
But seriously, it's like we're just gonna write this riff, and you're like, dude, that is a heavy riff, but you weren't like trying to write a breakdown. You weren't trying to write some build up.
The song, you know, who Seatbelt, the one that Trevor's referring to, that breakdown at the end of the song, like, dude, I would kick through a cement wall to that breakdown.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but it's not like slowed down. You know, it's not like some chug thing. It's just like the whole song, the whole riff. It's not like you're kind of sitting with your hands in your pocket throughout the whole song, waiting. The whole time you're like, well, I'm going to run on somebody's head. Someone's going to get punched. Yeah. And then at the end, everyone's going to die.
It's honestly the same. And this is where I think I am saying that this generation of post-hardcore will never be the same, is because the chaotic in these bands, people don't do that anymore, right? Like, this is straight up like Converge level with a post-hardcore feel. You know what I mean? And like, people just don't do that anymore. But in as cliche as it's going to be on this podcast for us to keep saying it, it's heavy without being heavy. But I don't think it's like, it's not the slow, gritty breakdowns. It's the like really fast, chaotic, in your face, energetic, makes you want to, you know, grab someone and throw them through a window.
You know, one of the interesting things though that they said that you guys are referring to is they were happy to be a bridge band. And it's what we just talked about. They said we did a lot of stuff with post-hardcore. Those were the groups that we enjoyed and everything. But our influences came from heavier music. Cave In, Converge, Refused. They're like, that's what we were listening to when we were developing our sound. So when you're saying they're more chaotic, like a Converge and stuff like that, it was an intentional, like, we're going to be post-hardcore and then slap you in the face.
Yep.
And it's a good kind of slap.
Well, and even too, like their clean singing they had here and there, it just fit, and it wasn't like whiny. You know what I mean? Because that's my other killer too. Like when we talk about, like me and Kyle were talking about the new Boundaries single a while ago, and how like the clean singing just kind of ruined it on such like a perfectly created band. So yeah, when you would kind of hear the like singing in the Bled, like at first I was like, here we go, had to ruin it, but I'm like, actually not bad. I kind of like, almost kind of follows like a Thursday pattern. Like it's not great singing, but it like it works and has like a personality to it. Like it's like, I don't think he was trying to sound good. It was like, just make it sound in tune enough that we can just put it on the album.
I would be so interested in talking to like a 14, 15-year-old today who's just breaking into metalcore and showing them bands like this and being like, listen specifically at the Queen singing and watching them wince, watching what you just did, Kyle, and just be like, no, shake their head, no. Because it's what you said, Josh. The way that they were not very good singers, but they also were really good singers at the same time for the style of music was awesome. But I also think that's where it elevated the really good singers like Johnny Craig, like whoever else you want to talk in the post-hardcore scene, Anthony Green, whatever you want to say. It made those guys stand out so much more. Today, it's all just auto-tuned and everyone sounds good.
Yeah. I just think so like a lot of the issue I have with genres like metalcore and current post-hardcore is like, where's the hardcore influence? Right? Like you listen to old hardcore bands like Gorilla Biscuit sings, right? But it still has hardcore tones to it. So like a clean singing doesn't mean you are or not metalcore or post-hardcore or hardcore or whatever. So like I get what you're saying. I think the singing in here still has the hardcore influence. I think their music, like you can hear the hardcore part of it being post-hardcore, right? Because that's by definition what post-hardcore is it's like a more like emotional-ish type.
Well,
hardcore. I don't even know how to explain that, but it's like singing is allowed in post-hardcore, you know?
Well, even in like the recordings themselves, you just want to talk about like the album. If you listen to a band like Refused or Botch or even early Converge or the Bled, the instruments are all recorded in real time. Like they're all real. They're all mic'd. Like they're all done on takes, things like that. And then there was a huge swift change around like 2007, 2008 where it went all digital and everything was just fake. Now, production value went way up because you could do whatever because it was all through a computer, but then it just lost its like hardcore touch. So like when you listen to old Poison the Well, like it may not sound like pristine in your speakers like a Joey Sturgis album does, but like for whatever reason it just hits so much harder because it's that much heavier. It's got a lot more character to it, I think.
We were just talking about this before you got on, Kyle and I were, and I would love for a current band to go back to an old style recording and hear what it sounded like today, because it's still going to be newer mics and all of that good stuff, right? But freaking mic up a couple amps and let's just hear what it sounds like, because I love it.
think that I wonder if it's like the bands are making music to sound good on an album and not to sound good live.
I would love for a band to do that. The only reason I think it would be so far and few in between because the ability to do that is out the window because it's at the hand of a computer and go, well, this is way more cost effective.
Right. It would take the right bands for sure. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to see that. And obviously it's probably gonna have to be a bigger band that does it. And if they're a bigger band, then they probably don't give a crap, right? Because they're whatever they put out, their fans are gonna listen to. But like Knocked Loose, what if they had done that? What if this last album had been like mic'd up amps and all of that stuff? I bet it would have been an absolute banger. But then you also don't get that funky deathcore style riff at the beginning of that.
So that's almost why I think like we talk about that Days Records label, like a lot of those bands I feel like are so heavy because the recording of it just sounds so more true to like what I would hear live.
Yeah.
But that's really why I think caught on to like the Bled's first record, Past the Flats. Like as soon as I heard it, I'm like, these guys are good. And so like my introduction to, I think so. This is back when you could still burn CDs or when that was like a big thing, but I didn't have the Bled record. So I had my buddy Matt burn it for me and got it through, he brought it to school one morning. I was still in junior high. And I still have the record to this day. It's on a little purple, like burnt disc. I'm sure it doesn't work anymore, but I'm keeping it forever. And I remember listening to it, and then like it was right before high school started that there was that tour coming through. It was Thrice, the Bled, and Under Oath and Videra. And Videra got done playing. And then I just remember people were like, oh yeah, this is the Bled. This is going to be wild, you know? And so this is right when they released Found in the Flood. And so they had that record out. They were promoting that like pretty heavily. And they opened up with that song Hotel Coral SX.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of has that long, weird intro. And I remember I'm like, I didn't know what to expect. And I remember as soon as it kicked in, I was like, I'm going to die. I got sucked in, one of those pits. And at that time, like, at least in, I wouldn't say like hardcore, but I would just say shows in general, pits were way more thick and you got hit way more than you do now.
Oh, yeah.
You were almost like swinging to keep people off of you than just like swinging because you wanted to mosh for the band. It was, it was either like fight or die kind of
half the like fun of mosh pits back in the day was just opening it up because you could just like bull rush people. It was way fun.
I freaking loved it where everyone was close and all of a sudden you knew that first band hit that note and you crouched down, you opened your arms and everyone just pushed. And you could see how big you got the pit. It was the best.
That was so fun. I remember that being my first introduction to the Bled. Then he came out with the cardboard cutout of himself.
Yeah,
it was just hilarious. And then they played a great set. But I remember they sounded exactly like the record. And my favorite part about the record and those drums is the drums sounded so good. I think that's honestly what kills it for me on a lot of records now is you can totally tell when drums are like real and fake.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, Pass the Flask. It's their first record. I don't even, if I remember correctly, their singer used to be their merch guy, and they used to have a previous singer, and it didn't work out, and so they took the merch guy, and made him his singer. That's just our current singer now.
I read that it happened the day before they were recording Pass the Flask.
Yeah, have you heard any of the early stuff with the first singer? I'm really pumped that they changed singers because this would not be the same band, not even close.
Interesting.
Well, so on the re-release of Pass the Flask in 2007, they have that old stuff on there.
Yeah, it should be towards the end.
Yeah, songs 11 through 17, I think, were their first two EPs.
Yes.
So if you go listen to that, that's what they originally sounded like. I was actually just watching an interview with their current singer, Jason. What's his name? Jason Munoz or something. Munoz. And he was saying that the guitarist was living with him at the time. They kicked the singer out, and we're like, "Hey, you want to jump in and do it?" He's like, "I mean, I've been listening to you guys for 2 years. I know the song, so sure, why not?" kind of thing. It was a very just nonchalant way of getting around to it. But he's like, "I knew the guys. I'd been around for a long time. It just made sense."
Yeah.
Good call, man.
Yeah, there's no way Pass the Flask would be Pass the Flask without those vocals.
No.
You know, like there's just such an essence of this entire band that they all play such a solid role. I remember
he has such a unique scream too.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not
so well.
It's like it's not overbearing. It's just kind of sorry, I think I got another mouse. Yeah, seriously. I'm gonna like burn my house to the ground. It's like it's not overbearing. It flows. It's just really fun. Yeah, I love this record front to back. I'm probably gonna say about this to all their records, but you know who Seatbelt? I know I was sending you messages the other day talking about like how they play these like weird leads where the way you can, I should have messaged you this. If you listen with one headphone in and one out, you can hear the different leads because they put one in one ear and one in the other ear. They're not in double. So
really?
Yeah. So if you ever like need a headphone out and you're like watching or not watching, you're like listening, you're like, why does the song sound so weird? It's because you're missing the other lead.
Interesting. I'll have to do that because after you sent that message, I went and specifically listened for that. And so you're talking about the layered leads, and it's not like just a regular rhythm riff. It's an actual like lead riff on top of another lead riff.
Yeah.
And
most bands traditionally, if they're both playing a lead, they're like harmonies of each other. Like August Burns Red, perfect example.
Yeah.
Or like you say, there's a rhythm guitar on the back while the other guitar's playing the lead. But I remember watching them both play live, and I remember watching both guitars, and they're both doing two completely different things. But somehow they meshed, and so it blows my mind in a writing process where you're like, how did you come up with that?
They probably were just like, one guy's like, dude, check this riff out. And the other guy's like, no, check this riff out. And he's like, no, check this riff out.
Seriously.
The weird thing is, though, after you said that, I started listening to it. And as you go through, you can almost hear like there's the chaos between the two, but they come together at just like merge points at different times. And then they like diverge from each other and then they come back. And just like, it is such a weird, but it flows together so well.
You know who Seatbelt is a perfect example of that.
Yep.
Because like the intro riff is like so unique, and then when the rest of the instruments come in, it like kind of blends together, but they're still playing different. But it like works, like it just like fits.
So if you listen to the riff, it's like right after the like chorus, I guess, if that's what you want to call it.
Yep. That's exactly the one that I listened to, where I was like, oh, I know what Josh is talking about now.
Yeah. So if you listen to that, but listen with one headphone out, you're only going to hear one lead and you'll be like,
sounds
what?
Weird.
But then it's the same way the other way. That's what I feel like personally what makes this band so unique. Is that somehow, some way they made that work, and not just on one record, but like on all.
And I'll be honest, I sat there for like an hour last night trying to find another band who did this.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find them. I'm sure there's other bands who do this. I'm sure if you go down the mathcore realm, that's where you're going to find other bands like this. But you're not finding post-hardcore, metalcore that is doing this. You've got to start to get into mathcore and some of these other specific subgenres that are probably going to do things along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like you said, they credited things like Converge and stuff, but they did credit like Dillinger,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess Dillinger's you get into like more mathcore and is closer to that, does crap like that.
So I think like when you mentioned Every Time I Die, I think they were a pretty good example. Just a lot of I think they did it close, but I don't think it was like close enough. Like a lot of the riffs they played the same, but the riffs are about as sporadic.
Well, and then what I was referring to, what I thought you were saying is like it used to be the two Every Time I Die guitar players, they would like alternate leads.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like you would have the one from Buckley and then you would have the one from Andy, but they were alternating.
Mm-hmm.
And so they never really quite overlapped. When I went back and listened to Every Time I Die, because I'm like, I swear there's a song like that. You were right. I couldn't find one where they overlapped each other.
Mm-hmm.
But you can hear where they switch each other. You can hear where they switch.
As weird as it is to say, I think Every Time I Die is a little more structured than
They are.
Yeah. Not much.
Which is a weird thing to say about Every Time I Die, right?
But that's exactly right. Like, and Josh pointing it out is what made me realize that. So
what
it's a good, like you said, gateway. It just, we talk a lot about Converge, but people that, if you sit down and listen to Converge, sometimes you're like, I can't, it's like jazz music. You're just like, I don't get it. You know, I love Converge. I think some of the Converge albums are incredible, but there's times where I listen to Converge where I'm like, they're all playing on different times. It's like weird jazzy stuff. I can't do it. This is a good in between. If you want some good mathcore, chaotic stuff that still has semblance of structure. So
I guess I'll just ask you guys real quick. What favorite songs off this record?
I mean, the first two, Red Wedding and You Know Who's Seatbelt, are two of the best, I think, post-hardcore songs ever written. So,
what about you, Trevor?
I mean, I'm right there with you. Ruth Buzzy, Better Watch Your Back, like that opening breakdown. It's just super heavy right at the get-go kind of thing. I love stuff like that. So that one has stood out for me. But You Know Who's Seatbelt, that is like, to me, that's the Bled.
100%.
Yeah. Dude, going back and listening to this album, like when you brought up Ruth Buzzy, like I'm pretty sure they played that when we saw them. And I just remember, it's funny that kids these days act like things like crowd killing weren't a thing back then. Cause I promise you that I'm jumping into the like front 3 rows of people hitting people when they play that. You know what I mean?
Like, the difference was like the intentional, like looking at someone and punching. We used to like look at the band and just swing back. And whoever got hit.
Jumping front into the front 3 rows, just hitting down on people. Absolutely.
Yeah, there was no TikTok to be in or an Instagram post to be in. It was just like, yeah, man, as long as I don't get arrested before the end of the night, we'll call it a win.
I was probably like 15, so people were probably like, what are you doing? You know, because I had arms the size of spaghetti noodles.
Shrugging you off.
Yeah.
Well, you guys named some good songs, so I'll throw out I really like the song "Nothing We Say Leaves This Room." I think that is a super good song, and then "We Are the Industry," the song right before.
Yeah.
To me, it's a slow song, right? But the leads are so like intriguing to me, and it just kind of has that build up going into the next song, and it just kind of has that like weird guitar going on right at the very end. Yeah, this
song felt like a Thursday song.
Yeah, weird, but it's good.
Yeah.
So this goes into like their next record. I kind of talked about it a little bit, Found in the Flood, which I thought was a really good follow-up record. So this is what they started touring on when I first saw them at that show. And to me, it was, I wouldn't say it was better than Past the Flask. I wouldn't say it was worse. To me, it was just like basically just another Past the Flask album with different songs. I'll probably say Past the Flask was still better, but I think this record was great. I think it sounded great. I really had no complaints. I could probably listen to this entire record front to back as well. What about you guys?
I think I agree with that. I think the only difference between this and Past the Flask is the production value goes up a little bit coming to this album, but you still get a lot, maybe a little bit more structure. I think that you don't have quite as much chaos between the double leads and stuff. You still get it, but not quite as much chaos. So a little bit of growth, a little bit better production value. But I mean, you could put these albums on just like one after the other. And like you said, you probably wouldn't notice too much. It's still the Bled. It's not a differing sound or anything.
They also introduced, I think, more cleans.
Yeah.
In this album.
Yep.
Because like The Last American Cowboy, it's got that really weird, and this is probably the Refused influence coming in. It's got that really weird, like high pitched guitar part during the chorus where he's singing.
Yep.
But again, it's like you were saying, Josh, like the cleans just sound good. It just fits. It doesn't sound gimmicky and it doesn't sound whiny or cheesy or anything. It just fit.
I love that song, Last American Cowboy. Just like where it starts out, I was like, and then like, you know, like it kind of starts to go a little bit quicker and then it builds up again and then it goes right back on another breakdown. But yeah, just such a great song.
I guess that's another thing to appreciate about these guys is they, even though, you know, they called themselves a gateway band, they never shied away from like the actual heaviness.
Right.
You know, because second album, you're getting more popular. You know, they start going on some of these bigger tours with bands like Thrice that aren't as heavy as them. And they weren't like, nah, we're not going to sell out. We're not going to, you know, we're not going to go the emo route or something like that. They just made another heavy, you know, Past the Flask version 2 album. And I commend them for that.
Yeah.
Because it would have been really easy for them to be like, no, let's play something softer. Let's try and fit in with, you know, the bands that we're touring with. And they didn't do that.
Well, it's cool too. Like when you think about that tour that we saw them on, this was right when Thrice released Beheshu, and this was when Under Oath was still touring on They're Only Chasing Safety. So they hadn't gone heavier. They had actually just got off of being heavy from
right.
I can't remember what that record was.
When the Sun, what's the album with When the Sun Sleeps? What's that called?
Yeah.
Changing of Times.
Changing of Times.
Yeah.
You know, changing from Dallas over to Spencer. So yeah, it was just, it's cool to see that, like I say, they were a good bridge band to be on tour with. I think this record's great. Aside from Last American Cowboy, what are some other songs you guys liked off that record?
I mean, just like Past the Flask, the first 2 songs.
Yeah.
Because Gutter Shark is a straight banger too.
Yeah.
Yep. Completely agree with that.
It's cool. So this one was released in 2005. The Past Flask released in 2003. So this is 2 years apart, but it's probably almost safe to say I bet a lot of these songs were kind of written around the same time, just judging by like how they switched singers at the last second to release Past the Flask. Had another 2 years worth of material. So
You know what? I don't know about that. I kind of wonder if they did a lot more growth and development once the guy joined the band. And I mean, they still kept their chaos and everything. But I think that looking at who they were touring with, I think they started to pick up some new influence, right? So 2004, they're on tour with Census Fell, Silverstein, Emmanuel. Just before that, they were on the Vans Warped Tour. And like, I think that maybe that's where a lot of the Queens start coming in, right? They go on tour with the Used. They did start to get into more post-hardcore. That's where the Queens get introduced. but it's still, like you keep saying, it's still just so heavy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, it'd be interesting to see or to hear
Yeah,
how this album came to be.
yeah. I guess I would just take that assumption and think that because he toured with them for like 2 years before they released Past the Flask, and then 2 years later they released Found in the Flood.
Well, you know what's interesting? The guy that produced it is the guy that did like Jimmy Eat World.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
So maybe that's where some of the cleans and more structure comes from. Is
Yeah, and
like
who
they
knows?
probably
Maybe
couldn't compute what
who
was
knows?
going on.
Maybe it was like Past the Flask was the gateway album for them to like kind of get into what they wanted to. Because, like you say, we talk about like at that time trying to record an album was a lot of money because you had to fly to a studio, you had to be there for a month, you had to mic up everything. It's not easy like it is now, where you can basically do it in your basement, plug it into a computer, and send a file over to somebody else and have them master it for you really quick.
Right.
So I know, like when Under Oath did Define the Great Line, they I think they were in two different studios. So Adam D from Killswitch did their guitars, but then they had their drums done in a completely different studio under a different producer, not a different producer, but just a different recording guy.
Interesting.
So
Just because they couldn't get the sound that they were looking for.
I honestly I'm not sure. It's in the Define the Great Line DVD. It kind of dives into it, but they specifically talk about being in two different studios. And to like kind of give you like a price on it, I remember I reached out to the studio that did the drums for that Define the Great Line album when we were exploring ideas to record at one point, and just for a day's worth of rent for the room was $500. That's not
Crazy.
including a producer to record all this stuff that comes with it, and that was also back in 2008. So I can only imagine what it
Yeah.
costs now, but yeah. So their next record, let me pull it up. My phone just Silent Treatment. So this was
Mhm.
released in 2007. I wouldn't say that I fell off on this record. I think I would say I just started taking interest in different kinds of music, like just kind of like with around this era. This wasn't a heavy band to me anymore. The heavy band to me was like As Blood Runs Black, and then I
Right.
was introduced to like Suicide Silence or Stick to Your Guns or Impending Doom, Sleeping Giant, things like that. So I kind of started taking like a different route of heavy because this was the gateway band for me to do that. But
Yeah.
I will say, so I went back and listened to Silent Treatment all the way through, and it still follows the same pathway for me, like Past the Flask and Found in the Flood. The first song is awesome.
Yep.
Great intro to the record.
Yeah.
And I remember because I actually listened to this album in 2007 when it came out, and I remember listening to that intro and being like, oh no, like they're gonna ruin it, and then the
Yep.
song just picks up, and I'm just like, oh no, this is great, this is so good.
Well, it's funny. So like they add in a little more harmonies with the clean singing. So it's like, okay, they've advanced in the singing a little bit more, but like it's still good. It's not like way overproduced to the point where you're like, crap, they've really ruined it. What are you doing?
My chair got caught on something. I was stuck.
But anyway, like but it still has like some sporadic stuff. It's a little more structured. The one thing that bummed me out about this record was the drums sounded different.
Yeah.
And I went, well, they lost one little bit of sound. I'm like, it's still good. But to me, and it sucks, in my diva opinion, that's the only thing that doesn't make it hold up with Past the Flask and Found in the Flood.
The drums definitely do feel produced, but when I went back and listened to this album, I was like, this is so good.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of like the change that they did to the drums. Maybe it's because I'm used to listening to like good produced music now.
The drums just had
bass line, the bass line and like the deep, like the bass of the drums as well is just so like pronounced in Shade Tree Mechanics.
Yeah.
You can feel it, right? You can feel when the bass and the drums are hitting you, and I'm like, and I like that.
So a lot of it has to do with like the changing of the snare tone. So like if you go listen to like early hardcore, like if you were to listen to early Earth Crisis, it's called a piccolo snare. It has that like, it's just really loud and bright, and it just like pops. Where you're almost kind of like, are you playing on like bongos or something? That's kind of what it almost sounds like.
Yeah.
And then it went from that to being like a really compressed sound of a snare. And then somehow it went from there to like a big room sound of a snare. So when you listen to this snare, it sounds like it's being played in like a huge, like a Bravenel Hall type deal.
Right. I get what you're saying.
What do you think, Trevor?
Yeah, I can hear that. I have the song on as you're talking about it just to kind of pick up on what you're saying. And I can see what you're saying. I feel like, though, this is the style of drum recording for 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels very much like that. And I'm thinking about riding around in Kyle's Grand Am, right? And like getting your big old bass speaker and having that double bass going. Like, this would have been shaking your car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like that's what 2007 music was trying to do. You had the heavy bass drops, you had the heavy double bass patterns and things like that that would like reverberate in your car. So it feels very meant for 2007, but I do hear what you're saying.
I think from a production standpoint, it does feel very 2007. From an actual musical standpoint, though, I don't know that there was anything else in 2007 that was really doing this sound.
Not really. If there was, I hate to say it, probably just wasn't super relevant.
Well, and it's what you were saying though, because if you wanted heavy music, you were going towards As Blood Runs Black. You were going towards Impending Doom, even like Suicide Silence, like deathcore, right? Or you were listening to metalcore, Devil Wears Prada, Under Oath. This is metalcore, but this is more like early 2000s metalcore with the 2007 production.
But see, I think this is where like I like to get into the differentiation between like music that's darker and music that's heavier. Because when you listen to like Threes Away and just how fast and aggressive it is, like that to me is heavier than that music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that song is just in your face the entire time. Like it doesn't stop.
I think honestly, so like the Bled for me, like now, like it's really good, but I feel like now it's grown on me more. Like I almost didn't appreciate how heavy it was because like I can't go and listen to Amir and be like, that's heavy. I go back and listen to Amir and be like, that's corny. Why was I into this? Like I can listen to it and kind of be like cheesy about it and be like, cool, don't gotta listen to that for another like 20 years. You know what I mean? But like I can go back and listen to the Bled, and it's just kind of one of those. I'm like, I really didn't appreciate this band like it was. And I'm like, man, because if you had to go back and see one band, like not one band, but choose between two, would it be Amir or the Bled?
It's absolutely the Bled.
You
and I'm moshing harder and I'm seeing the Bled in like a couple months. Like they're gonna have to check people's insurance cards before they walk into the venue, dude. Like I'm going to mosh super hard for these guys.
But like in 2007, it was like, were you gonna go see the Bled tour on this record? Or are you gonna go see the new band Amir they just came out with?
Yeah.
You're probably going to see Amir, not just because it was Amir, but it was like, was where all your friends are going. Like it's the new thing, you know. You bring your extra pair of basketball shorts, change into moshing, like you know what I mean.
They definitely didn't have the reputation. It is weird, and we were talking about this because the bands that they toured with, the Used, Census Fell, Silverstein, like they were on tours. Atreyu, they were on tours with huge bands.
In 2007, they're with Alexis on Fire, and this is like prime Alexis on Fire time. You know,
they did. I know they played. I don't know how many Warped Tours they played, but I know they were on Warped Tour as well.
Yeah, no, they were on like at least 3 or 4. But did they get caught in the never the headliner trap kind of thing?
I know it could be on this record, or maybe it's the next one. I know they changed drummers.
Okay.
I know on the last record was done with a different drummer. I know that for sure, but I don't know if they went through a member lineup on this record. But I know we've talked about like previous bands. So I mean, you kind of get looking about it. Okay, so Under Oath went towards Define the Great Line. They kind of went through their weird lineup changes where Aaron leaves and now they have the original drummer from Norma Jean for a little bit. From Autumn to Ashes is pretty much done. Thursday kind of took a different road. Thrice is doing the Alchemy Index. They're doing Dustin Kendrew stuff. Like they're totally doing something weird. So it almost kind of makes me think it was just kind of one of those like they didn't want to be the band that wanted to go sell out and tour with a band like Amir. They didn't want to tour.
It's a different, as funny as that is, and I guess people that are looking from the outside in to our music genre, saying that like Amir and the Bled wouldn't tour together because they're different crowds and those are different people. A lot of people aren't going to understand that, But it's the same thing with like a Boy Sets Fire, with a From Autumn to Ashes. These aren't the same people that are going out to these shows that we're going to see as Blood Runs Black or Suicide Silence or things like that. And so, I mean, with the rise of Risecore and all that stuff, like I can see why bands like this just kind of,
I saw the Bled play with August Burns Red, I think in 2007, 2008. I actually think, I don't know if, I can't remember if you went or not, Trevor, but I know me and Kyle were there.
Uh-huh. It's 2008, I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember who all played.
It was 2008. It was Every Time I Die, August Burns Red, and The Human Abstract.
Yep.
Oh, I may have been there because I saw The Human Abstract a couple times. I know I saw August Burns Red, I don't know, 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, I remember seeing them there. Still awesome. And then, they just kind of, I wouldn't say they fell off. I want to probably say it was probably on my bias side of being like, nah, that's not hardcore anymore.
I mean, you're not going to that tour to see the Bled. You're going to that tour to see Every Time I Die and August Burns Red.
Right.
See, and dude, that's what sucks, right? Like these guys were so good, and the last thing on your mind is the Bled playing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's such a weird statement to make right now.
I wish that I could go back and I wish I could go back and like record what I was thinking listening to the Bled in 2008, right? After we've gotten into the Amirs and things like that. What were my thoughts listening to the Bled? Was it just a nostalgia, or did I sit there and think like, dang, these guys are still just so freaking good?
You got to think though too, like, I hate saying it like this because it's going to come out way wrong. But like by that time on that tour, like the Bled is old news.
Yeah.
Because August Burns Red just dropped Constellations, which you didn't think they were going to get heavier in their first record, and then they did. And it was just like, same thing. It was just like an insane breakdown after breakdown, but it was also very melodic. And this is also the same time span that Every Time I Die released a lot of their like popular songs that were also new.
2007's The Big Dirty.
Yeah.
Every Time I Die, which is, you could say maybe one of their best albums, right?
I mean, that's Guitar Hero, right? That's New Black.
Yeah.
Is that right?
No. New Black is
that 2004, 2005.
Yeah, New Black was earlier. Was it Hot Damn?
No, Gutter Phenomenon, excuse me. 2006, though. That's 2006. So, I mean, it's weird because Every Time I Die is older than the Bled in terms of like when they started and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when they peaked, the Bled peaked early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Past the Blast came out and it was so good that like that's what put them on the map and everything. By 2006, 2007, they're 3 albums in and everyone's still talking about Past the Flask.
Yep.
They're not talking about Silent Treatment. They're talking about Past the Flask and referring to them as, remember that band we saw back in 2003? 2004.
Yeah.
And it's probably funny because they're like, I don't remember the song name, but then you play, you know who seatbelt, and I'm like, yep, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, when they announced their reunion tour that they're doing in Texas, the first thing I did was text my older brother, and it's like, here's a 37-year-old guy that I'm talking to him about the Bled because I know that he's pumped about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like we talked about it because we're music enthusiasts and the Bled slays, but like, I don't know that I could go to other people that are of our age or a little younger and be like, dude, the Bled's playing Passive Flask. They're gonna be like, what? Who?
Yep.
You know, what Flask?
I probably fair to say, and it's just because like we were just a little younger, we caught like the tail end of that. It's almost like we didn't miss it, but we kind of did. So
Yeah.
like bands like we talked about, like Converge or Botch or Poison the Well or The Bled, we caught like the tail end of that before there's a huge swift into like okay, so your brother, how old was he when Past Flask came out? Probably like 17, 18?
He's 4 years older than me. So let's see. Passive Flask was 2003 or 4?
2003.
Okay, so he's what, 17?
17, okay. And so when at 17 years old, we're like, yeah, we're going to see bands like Attack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or Confide, you know what I mean? That was like our thing, and it just didn't hold up like the Bled, and it never will. But
I actually feel like Confide's first album before the stupid voiceover, and I'm going to find this guy, and I'm going to tell him how I feel. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to tell him how I feel, but the stupid vocal overlays. Anyways, the first Confide album actually doesn't feel that far off from this kind of stuff, but
right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That was a weird sidetrack.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree there. Yeah. I like I say, I feel like this band's grown on me from hearing them now and going back and listening to them. I'm like, I underappreciated it. But
dude, so me and Trevor were talking about this before you jumped on about that exact thing of like, what were we thinking? Like, if I could go back and do it now, I'd have just like gotten myself into a coma during all the like Risecore stuff. Cause I just like all the time I wasted on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't even like Attack anymore. What was I doing? Like, Crabcore is so bad.
Yeah.
You know,
it was
we should have been doing this, right? People should have been showing up for the Bled, for Poison the Well, for Boy Sets Fire, and that should have been the music that was coming out.
The problem was it didn't sound good in your stereo with the sub. That's where
that's true. There were no digital like bass drops and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
it was a cool change. It just didn't hold up.
Yeah.
So yeah, their last record. You're a huge fan of this record, Trevor.
Oh my gosh, dude. I had never honestly listened to this record until the last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so disappointed I never did. I love this record. So Heat Fetish came out 2010. To be honest, 2010, I'm pretty much listening to pop punk. Like, I wasn't listening to a ton of heavy music at the time, just some of the old bands that we were listening to. But 2010, it was really pop punk for me and for today. That was the heavy music I was listening to. So sitting down and listening to this, I could not believe how good this album was. And like the first song, Devolver, I was telling Kyle, it's like He Is Legend vibes when they get into the Queen singing parts. Mm-hmm. And I'm all for it, man. It was so sick.
So this one, I remember when they started recording it, they were posting like videos and stuff of them in the studio, and that's when I noticed they had a different drummer. And the different drummer, I remember he looked old as dirt. I was like, you got a grandpa behind the drums. But I got to see them play. I remember who they played with, but I remember they played at a venue called The Basement in Ogden. It was at the first location. And they played a lot of older stuff, Past the Flask and Found in the Flood. And I remember seeing them and like, music had changed so much by then. It was like you said, like we kind of talked about, like, I don't know how many people would actually be pumped to see the Bled. Dude, nobody went wild for them like they did in 2005. So it's just me being a total respectably a-hole. And like, I remember they started playing the breakdown in what's the first song called off Past the Flask? Red Wedding.
Red Wedding.
Red Wedding.
And I'm just like in the singer's face on the stage, like, you will pay the price. Close your eyes and die. Over and over. And I've got all these like people like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, oh, dude. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have made it this far. I was dying.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, man.
But what do you think about this record?
I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, it does sound a little different, but it still sounds like them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they've been doing this for a long time at this point. You know, I'm not surprised that their sound changed, or maybe they just kind of the tank's running on fumes at this point. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But for an album like this to come out in 2010 is super unique compared to all the rest of the music that's out there. And yeah, I actually really liked it. So again, just like with every single album they have, the first two songs wreck because Mouth Breather is disgustingly good. And like Smoke Breaks, awesome song. So no, dude, I'm down with this album. I actually never listened to it when it came out. This was the first time I'd gone back and listened to it. So,
yeah.
Which I'm kind of grateful for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I appreciate it for what it is. Absolutely.
It's kind of weird. I actually really I hate to say it like this because it's going to be like, well, what about all these other bands? But I actually really like the fact that their last record was just released in 2010. They didn't take some weird 10-year hiatus and try to like come back like some of these other bands have. That they're just like, yeah, man,
now, dude.
Like we're just doing a 20-year Past the Flask tour deal, and it's not even like a full tour. It's just kind of like a few things here and there, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Dude, good call on this band, man. Seriously, we've listened to a lot of bands like this where there's been albums where we're just like, what were they doing?
We always message, and there's usually one. There's usually one where it's just like either we disagree because one of us likes it, or it gets a little bit too weird or something. We got that with Poison the Well on Tropical Rot, right?
See, I like Tropical Rot, but
yeah, no, I did too. But it got out there, right?
It got weird.
It got weird. Yeah. This one, like, they just go straight through. Whole discography, front to back. It's the Bled. If you're a fan of this music, this style, like, you're going to like everything that you hear.
Yeah.
100%.
I'd like to know what people, for those that listen, man, hit us up on social media and let us know what you think about the Bled. Because I would genuinely like to hear your thoughts on how they sound to you now. I was talking to this coworker that, you know, we talk a lot about music. He's a big like August Burns Red fan and Kubla Khan and stuff. And so I messaged him today. I was like, dude, did you ever listen to the Bled? And he's older than me. He's about my brother's age. And he's like, no, dude, I've never heard of him.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So I was like, well, this is going to be great that you're going to listen to them for the first time. Cause you know, get ready. And so I'm going to message him tomorrow and see what he thinks, but it's just, I don't know. It's crazy that a band this good gets glossed over by someone who was supposedly in the scene, you know?
And so I'd be really curious, and you need to convince this guy to listen to the full discography. And I want his opinion on what the best record is. Do we have too much nostalgia for Past the Flask?
Sure.
Or is it like, I'm just going to put mouth in your guys' mouth in your words. Words.
Are you having a stroke? Are you okay? Do you smell gasoline?
I'm going to say Past the Flask is the number one for all three of us, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
What's number two for you guys?
Found on the Flood.
Okay.
Like for me, literally, I feel like literally for me, it just goes like Past the Flask, Found on the Flood, and then
it just is sequential.
Yeah, it's just sequential. It's just like none of it's like bad. It's just my least.
It's like 1A, 1B. You know,
it's like you know, the original Home Alone's really good, but so is Home Alone Lost in New York. Neither one of them's bad. I just like the first one.
I don't know,
a little better.
We're gonna disagree on that one because the second one's definitely better.
It's actually the third one's the best.
Okay, I'm leaving. So I don't know that I can definitively say that Found in the Flood is better than Silent Treatment. I actually really like Silent Treatment. So
I put Heat Fetish as number 2. So
okay, well, hey, cool.
I freaking loved Heat Fetish. And I'll be honest, I didn't listen to Silent Treatment a ton when it came out. So I was listening to it pretty fresh ears between Heat Fetish and Silent Treatment. So I was kind of just stacking them up against each other. Found in the Flood is too much like Past the Flask for me. And I got enough of Past the Flask, in my opinion. So, like, it's number 3, in my opinion. But and again, we're talking like minor differences here.
Yeah.
But
like on a technicality.
Exactly. I'm like Past the Flask, Heat Fetish, Found in the Flood, Silent Treatment. And that might just be because of how much I really did enjoy listening to Heat Fetish this week. That might be different if I was to continue listening to this for another month. Right? So
the last thing I want to add about this band, so the vocalist, James, he was writing and acting in the Funny or Die comedy sketch stuff. It's sick. You go from making music like this to making just the dumbest sketches ever.
Have you guys ever seen the Funny or Die pooping in front of a stranger? Yeah. Oh my god. If you've never watched Pooping in Front of a Stranger, that's like one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And I showed it to my dad and we laugh about it every time. It's the best.
That's funny. Well, whose turn is it next week?
I think it's me, and I don't know that we're doing it next week. I think it might be 2 weeks.
Where are you going now?
Well, I think we were going to do a local episode next week.
Oh.
And then
we'll see.
We'll see.
But do you know...
yeah, I'm going to do, in honor of bands that I'm going to be seeing this year, I want to do Hot Water Music.
Okay. I'll be honest with you. I've never listened to Hot Water Music, so this will be interesting.
Okay, well...
I'm actually pretty limited, too.
Their super early stuff's a little difficult just because it's like from the 90s, so... But it's good music.
Why? Production-wise?
Yeah, it's production. It's not the best. But their newer stuff's freaking good, so...
Well, Josh, we can talk crap then.
They're like hardcore kids that play in a non-hardcore band, and they're not kids. They're like in their 50s now. So,
okay, Hot Water Music. That's where we're at.
Hot Water Music. Okay.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Catch you all next week. Peace.
Bye.
Later.